The clock on my nightstand glowed 3:02 a.m. as I zipped up my suitcase, my hands trembling slightly from adrenaline rather than cold. Brandon lay beside me, snoring softly, completely unaware that his wife was about to disappear into the night. His face looked peaceful in the dim light filtering through our bedroom curtains, so different from the harsh expression he'd worn just hours earlier when he'd chosen his mother's side over mine. I picked up my suitcase, testing its weight. Everything I needed for the next week was packed inside. My laptop, some clothes, and the small jewelry box my grandmother had given me. The one thing in this house that truly felt like mine anymore. The hardwood floor creaked slightly under my feet, and I froze, watching Brandon's chest rise and fall steadily. He didn't stir. Moving like a ghost through my own home, I made my way to the kitchen. The sight that greeted me there made my stomach clench with a mixture of anger and satisfaction. Patricia's handwritten list lay spread across the granite countertop like a battle plan, 50 names written in her perfect cursive, each one representing a guest who would arrive in just 6 hours expecting a feast. "Beef Wellington for 12, I whispered, reading the impossible menu she'd demanded. "Lobster bisque for 50, 3 different desserts, gluten-free options, vegan alternatives." The list went on and on, each item more ridiculous than the last. She'd calculated that I would need to start cooking at exactly 3 a.m. to have everything ready by 9 a.m. when the first guests arrived. Well, she was right about the timing. I was definitely doing something at 3 a.m., just not what she expected. I pulled out my phone and checked my flight confirmation one more time. Flight 447 to Denver, departing at 6:15 a.m. My sister Amy had no idea I was coming. I'd bought the ticket in a moment of pure rage after Brandon had looked me in the eye and said those words that still echoed in my head. "You won't dare embarrass me." The funny thing was, he was absolutely right. I wouldn't embarrass him. I was going to let him embarrass himself. I walked over to the refrigerator, where Patricia had taped another note in her demanding handwriting. "Remember, presentation is everything. These people judge harshly. Don't let the family down." Below it, she'd added a smiley face, as if that somehow made her threats seem friendly. I grabbed a pen from the counter and found a clean piece of paper. For a moment, I hesitated. Once I wrote this note, there would be no going back. Brandon would wake up in a few hours to find his wife gone and 50 hungry guests on their way to an empty kitchen. But then I remembered the look in his eyes when his mother had demanded I cook for her entire social circle. I remembered how he'd nodded along when she'd criticized my modern attitude and lack of proper wife skills. I remembered how he'd stood there silently while she'd listed all the ways I might humiliate their family name. Most of all, I remembered the moment when I'd begged him to stand up for me, and he'd chosen her side instead. My pen moved across the paper with steady strokes. "Gone to visit my sister. Good luck with your party. Natalie." I placed the note right on top of Patricia's precious guest list, then stepped back to admire my work. Simple, direct, and absolutely devastating. In about 3 hours, Brandon would stumble into this kitchen expecting to find me frantically cooking, and instead he'd find this note and the slow, horrible realization of what was about to happen. I could already picture Patricia's face when she discovered that her perfect party was about to become a complete disaster. The woman who'd spent 8 months treating me like an incompetent child was about to learn what real embarrassment felt like. My phone buzzed with a text from my taxi driver. "Outside now. Perfect timing." I took one last look around the kitchen that had become my prison over the past 3 days. The expensive pots and pans Patricia had insisted I use sat clean and unused in their cabinets. The ingredients she'd demanded I buy with my own money, nearly $800 worth, sat untouched in the refrigerator. Let them figure it out. I grabbed my purse and suitcase, then walked to the front door. My hand paused on the handle as I heard Brandon shift in bed upstairs. For just a moment, I felt a flicker of doubt. Was I being too harsh? Was there another way to handle this? Then I remembered his words again. "You won't dare embarrass me." I smiled in the darkness and opened the door. He was about to learn just how wrong he was. 3 days earlier, I was sitting at my computer in our home office, working on a logo design for a local bakery, when I heard the front door slam with enough force to rattle the windows. Patricia never just entered our house, she made an entrance. Her heels clicked across the hardwood floor like a countdown timer, each step announcing her arrival to anyone within a 3-block radius. "Brandon, Natalie, family meeting in the living room now." Her voice carried the same tone she probably used to summon servants in whatever fantasy world she lived in. I saved my work and walked downstairs, finding Brandon already seated on our couch looking like a scolded child. Patricia stood in the center of our living room, perfectly dressed as always in her cream-colored suit and pearls, holding what looked like a small notebook. "Wonderful news," she began, though her smile looked more predatory than joyful. "I've decided to host a dinner party this Saturday evening. Nothing too elaborate, just a small gathering to celebrate the Henderson merger that Brandon helped close." Brandon perked up slightly. "That's nice, Mom. How many people are you thinking?" "Oh, just our usual crowd." Patricia waved her hand dismissively. "Helen and Robert, the Thompsons, the Washingtons, a few people from the country club, maybe 40 or 50 guests." I nearly choked on the water I'd been sipping. 50 people? Patricia, that's not a small gathering. That's a banquet. Her eyes fixed on me with laser precision. Which brings me to the exciting part. "Natalie, dear, I thought this would be the perfect opportunity for you to show off those cooking skills you're always talking about." "I never talk about cooking skills," I said slowly, feeling a trap closing around me. "I can barely make pasta without burning it." Patricia's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "Oh, don't be so modest. Every good wife should know how to prepare a proper meal for her husband's colleagues and family. It's really quite basic." Brandon shifted uncomfortably beside me. I could see the conflict playing out on his face. He knew this was unreasonable, but he'd never learned how to say no to his mother. "Patricia," I tried to keep my voice calm, "I work full-time and I've never cooked for more than 4 people in my life. Maybe we could hire a caterer or have it at a restaurant." The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Patricia's smile never wavered, but her eyes turned ice cold. "Hire a caterer?" she repeated, as if I'd suggested we serve garbage. "For a family dinner? What would people think? That we can't manage our own household?" "It's not about managing anything," I said, feeling my patience starting to fray. "It's about being realistic. 50 people is a massive undertaking." "Helen Morrison hosted 60 people last month," Patricia continued, opening her little notebook. "Made everything herself. Her daughter-in-law helped, of course, but Helen did most of the work. She's been bragging about it for weeks." And there it was. The real reason for this sudden dinner party. Patricia's ongoing competition with her best friend Helen had reached a new level, and I was apparently going to be her secret weapon. "Mom," Brandon finally spoke up, though his voice lacked any real conviction. "Maybe Natalie has a point. 50 people is a lot of work." Patricia turned her attention to her son, and I watched him physically shrink under her gaze. "Brandon, sweetheart, surely you want your wife to make a good impression on your colleagues? The Hendersons will be there, along with several partners from your firm. This could be very important for your career." I saw the exact moment Brandon caved. His shoulders slumped, and he avoided my eyes. "I mean, if you think it would help." "It's settled then." Patricia clapped her hands together like she'd just solved world hunger. "Natalie will handle the cooking, I'll manage the guest list and decorations. It'll be absolutely perfect." "Wait," I stood up, my heart racing. "I never agreed to this. Patricia, I'm telling you right now, I cannot cook for 50 people. It's impossible." Her smile turned patronizing. "Oh, honey, you're just nervous. It's perfectly natural. I felt the same way before my first big dinner party, but you'll figure it out. You have 3 whole days to prepare." 3 days? I felt like I was drowning. "You want me to plan and cook a dinner party for 50 people in 3 days? Well, you'll need to go shopping tomorrow, of course. I'll make a list of everything we'll need. Nothing too fancy, just the basics. Appetizers, soup course, main course, sides, desserts. Oh, and we'll need vegetarian options too. The Washingtons don't eat meat." Brandon was staring at his hands, completely useless. I realized with growing horror that he was actually going to let this happen. "This is insane," I whispered. Patricia's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing the steel underneath. "What's insane, dear, is a wife who won't support her husband's career. but I'm sure you'll do the right thing." The threat hung in the air between us, crystal clear. That night, I cornered Brandon in our bedroom while he was getting ready for bed. He was moving around like everything was normal, hanging up his work clothes and checking his phone, completely ignoring the elephant in the room. "We need to talk," I said, closing the door behind me. He didn't look up from his phone. "About what?" "About what?" I stared at him in disbelief. "About your mother expecting me to cook for 50 people in 3 days. About you sitting there like a statue while she basically threatened me." Brandon finally put his phone down, but he still wouldn't meet my eyes. "She didn't threaten you, Natalie. She's just excited about the party." "Excited?" I sat down on the edge of our bed, trying to keep my voice calm. "Brandon, listen to me. I have never cooked for more than 4 people. I burned grilled cheese last week. Your mother wants me to prepare a multi-course meal for 50 of your colleagues and her social circle." "Maybe it's not as hard as you think," he said weakly. "People cook for big groups all the time. Professional caterers cook for big groups, people with experience and industrial kitchens and teams of helpers." I could feel my voice rising despite my efforts. "I'm a graphic designer, not a chef." Brandon finally looked at me, and I could see the conflict in his eyes. "Look, I know it seems overwhelming, but Mom really wants this to work out. The Hendersons are going to be there, and Mr. Peterson from the firm. This could be huge for my career. So hire a caterer," I said for the second time that day. "Use the money from your bonus. Problem solved." "We can't do that now. Mom already told Helen that you were cooking. If we hire caterers, it'll look like we don't trust you, or like we're showing off." I felt something cold settle in my stomach. She already told Helen? When? Brandon looked guilty. "She called her right after she left here. She was really excited to tell her about your cooking." "My cooking? That doesn't exist." I stood up, pacing to the window. "Brandon, she set me up. She told her biggest rival that I was going to cook before even asking me. Now if I back out, I look like the failure, not her." "You're overthinking this," Brandon said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Mom believes in you. She thinks you can do it." "No, she doesn't." The realization hit me like a slap. She wants me to fail. She wants me to embarrass myself in front of all those people so she can swoop in and save the day. Or better yet, so she can spend the next year telling everyone how her son's wife couldn't handle a simple dinner party. Brandon was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Even if that's true, what choice do we have now? The invitations are already going out." "We have lots of choices." I turned to face him. "We can tell your mother that this was unreasonable from the start. We can hire professionals. We can move the party to a restaurant. We can cancel it entirely." "I can't do that to her," Brandon said. And there it was. The truth I'd been trying to ignore for 8 months of marriage. When it came down to choosing between his mother and his wife, Patricia would always win. "So you're going to do it to me instead?" He looked miserable, but he didn't deny it. "Can't you at least try? Maybe look up some recipes online? Keep it simple?" I stared at my husband, this man I'd promised to love and honor, and felt something break inside my chest. "Do you have any idea what you're asking me to do?" "I'm asking you to help my family," he said, finally showing some emotion. "I'm asking you to be supportive." "You're asking me to set myself up for public humiliation so your mother can win some stupid competition with her friend. That's not fair. What's not fair is expecting your wife to perform miracles because you're too scared to stand up to your mother." The words hung between us like a physical barrier. Brandon's face flushed red, but instead of anger, I saw shame. He knew I was right, but he still wasn't going to do anything about it. "Fine," I said quietly. "I'll look into it. But Brandon, if this goes badly, and it will go badly, I want you to remember that you chose this." The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, surrounded by cookbooks I'd borrowed from our neighbor. Patricia's simple menu lay beside me, and with each item I researched, my sense of doom grew deeper. Beef Wellington for 12 people. I'd never even eaten beef Wellington, let alone cooked it. The recipe I found online had 37 steps and required something called pâté de foie gras, lobster bisque for 50. The ingredients alone would cost more than our monthly grocery budget. 3 different desserts, including something called chocolate soufflé that apparently collapsed if you looked at it wrong. I was doomed. Friday evening arrived like a death sentence. I'd spent the entire day shopping for ingredients, my credit card taking hit after hit as I bought items I couldn't even pronounce. Truffle oil, saffron threads, duck liver pâté. The total came to $783. Money we didn't really have, but Patricia had insisted that quality ingredients make all the difference. I was sitting at the kitchen table, surrounded by recipe printouts and feeling completely overwhelmed when Patricia's car pulled into our driveway. Through the window, I could see her marching toward our front door with that determined stride that meant trouble. She didn't bother knocking. The front door opened, and her voice filled the house. "Natalie, I have wonderful news." I closed my eyes and counted to 3 before responding. "In the kitchen, Patricia." She swept in wearing a bright yellow dress and carrying yet another notebook. Her smile was so wide it looked painful. "I've been making some final adjustments to the guest list," she announced, setting her notebook down on top of my recipes. "A few more people heard about our little gathering and simply insisted on coming." My stomach dropped. "How many more people?" "Just a handful. The Clarks, the Johnsons, and Helen's daughter visiting from New York. Oh, and I invited the new pastor and his wife. We really should make a good impression on them." I did quick math in my head. "Patricia, that's 8 more people. We're already at 50. 58, she corrected cheerfully. "But who's counting? The more the merrier." "I'm counting." I stood up so fast my chair scraped against the floor. "I'm counting because I'm the one who has to cook for all these people." Patricia's smile flickered but didn't disappear. "Now, dear, there's no need to get hysterical. It's just a few extra portions." "A few extra portions?" I grabbed the recipe for beef Wellington and waved it at her. "Do you know what this recipe calls for? 2 pounds of beef tenderloin per Wellington? That's 24 pounds of the most expensive cut of beef in the store. For 58 people, I'd need to make 5 of these things." "Well, then make 5, Patricia said, as if I'd just solved the problem myself. "Patricia, listen to me very carefully." I set the recipe down and looked her directly in the eyes. "I cannot do this. I am not a professional chef. I don't have the skills, the equipment, or the experience to pull this off." Her mask finally slipped completely. The sweet, concerned mother-in-law disappeared, replaced by something much colder. "What I'm hearing," she said slowly, "is that you don't want to support your husband's career. What I'm hearing is that you think you're too good to cook for his family and colleagues. That's not what I'm saying at all. Because let me tell you something, young lady." Patricia stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. "Helen Morrison has been bragging for months about her daughter-in-law's cooking. She's been making little comments about how modern wives don't know how to take care of their families properly. This dinner party is my chance to show her exactly what my son's wife is capable of." The truth finally came out. This wasn't about celebrating Brandon's work success or bringing the family together. This was about Patricia's petty rivalry with her best friend, and I was the weapon she planned to use. "And if I can't pull it off?" I asked quietly. Patricia's smile returned, but it was sharp as a knife. "Then I suppose we'll all learn something about what kind of wife my son married, won't we?" The threat was crystal clear: succeed or be branded as the inadequate wife who couldn't handle basic responsibilities. Either way, Patricia won. If I succeeded, she got to brag about her daughter-in-law. If I failed, she got to play the long-suffering mother-in-law, stuck with an incompetent addition to the family. "I need to start cooking at 3 in the morning to have everything ready," I said, my voice hollow. "Then you'd better get some sleep tonight," Patricia replied sweetly. "Big day tomorrow." She gathered up her notebook and headed for the door, pausing only to add, "Oh, and Natalie? Make sure you wear something nice tomorrow. First impressions matter so much, don't you think?" After she left, I sat alone in my kitchen, staring at the mountain of expensive ingredients and impossible recipes. My hands were shaking as I picked up my phone to call Brandon. "How did the shopping go?" he asked when he answered. "Your mother just added 8 more people to the guest list," I said without preamble. There was silence on the other end. "Brandon, did you hear me?" Maybe she's just excited," he said weakly. "She threatened me," I said quietly. "She made it very clear that if I fail tomorrow, she'll make sure everyone knows what kind of wife you married." Another long pause. Then, "Natalie, you're being dramatic. Mom doesn't threaten people." And that's when I knew. My own husband was going to let me drown rather than stand up to his mother. "You won't dare embarrass me," he added, and those 5 words sealed my fate. I was done. The taxi ride to the airport felt like an escape from prison. As the city lights blurred past the window, I kept checking my phone, half expecting Brandon to wake up and discover my absence early. But the screen remained dark. No calls, no texts, no frantic messages asking where I was. My driver, an older man named Carlos, glanced at me in the rearview mirror. "Early flight?" "The earliest I could get," I replied, clutching my purse tighter. Inside was my hastily packed wallet, my passport, and the credit card I'd used to buy my ticket. The same card that now carried the weight of $783 in groceries that would never be cooked. "Running away or running towards something?" Carlos asked with a knowing smile. I thought about that for a moment. "Both, I think." The airport was surprisingly busy for 4 a.m. I checked in at the self-service kiosk, my hands steadier now than they'd been when I was packing. Each step away from that house felt like shedding a heavy coat I'd been forced to wear. As I waited in the security line, I allowed myself to imagine what was happening back home. Brandon would sleep for another 3 hours, blissfully unaware that his wife had vanished into the night. He'd probably wake up around 7, expecting to find me frantically chopping vegetables and panicking about timing. Instead, he'd find my note sitting on top of Patricia's precious guest list. The thought made me smile for the first time in days. Ma'am, you're next." I snapped back to reality and moved through security, my small carry-on bag sliding through the X-ray machine. Everything I owned that truly mattered fit in one suitcase. That realization should have been depressing, but instead it felt liberating. At the gate, I finally turned on my phone and scrolled to my sister Amy's contact. My finger hovered over the call button. It was 5 a.m. here, which meant it was 4 a.m. in Denver. Amy would be asleep, probably curled up next to her husband Tom with their 2 kids down the hall. I hadn't spoken to Amy in 3 weeks. Not because we'd fought, but because every conversation lately ended with her asking if I was happy, and I'd gotten tired of lying. The boarding announcement crackled over the intercom. "Flight 447 to Denver, now boarding all passengers." I gathered my things and joined the line, still holding my phone. As I handed my boarding pass to the gate agent, I made my decision and hit call. Amy answered on the 4th ring, her voice thick with sleep. "Natalie, what's wrong? It's 4 in the morning." "I'm getting on a plane," I said, walking down the jet bridge. "I'll be in Denver in 3 hours." "What? Why? Is everything okay?" I found my seat, 14A, a window seat I'd specifically chosen so I could watch my old life disappear below the clouds. "No, everything is definitely not okay, but it's about to be." "Natalie, you're scaring me. What happened?" As the plane filled with passengers around me, I gave Amy the shortest version I could manage. Patricia's impossible demands, Brandon's betrayal, the setup that was designed to make me fail. "So you just left?" Amy's voice was fully awake now, tinged with something between shock and admiration. "I left a note," I said, buckling my seatbelt. "Very polite. Just said I was visiting you and wished them luck with their party." Amy was quiet for a moment. Then she started laughing, not the polite chuckle she usually gave, but deep, genuine laughter that made other passengers look in my direction. "Oh my God, Natalie. 58 people are going to show up expecting a feast, and they're going to find an empty kitchen and 2 very embarrassed hosts," I finished. "This is the most rebellious thing you've ever done in your entire life." She was right. I'd always been the good girl, the peacekeeper, the one who bent over backward to avoid conflict. Even in college, I was the one who mediated roommate disputes and made sure everyone got along. "The flight attendant is giving me dirty looks," I whispered as the safety demonstration began. "I should probably hang up." "Natalie?" Amy's voice was softer now. "I'm proud of you." Those 4 words hit me harder than I expected. When was the last time someone had said they were proud of me? When was the last time I'd done something worth being proud of? "I'll pick you up at the airport," Amy continued. "We'll figure everything out when you get here." As the plane pushed back from the gate, I turned off my phone and pressed my face to the window. Somewhere below, Brandon was still sleeping peacefully, completely unaware that his world was about to implode. The plane lifted off, carrying me away from the mess I'd left behind and toward the sister who'd always believed I was stronger than I thought I was. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Brandon's alarm went off at 7 a.m., just like every Saturday morning. He rolled over, expecting to find my side of the bed empty. I should have been downstairs by now, 4 hours into the cooking marathon that would determine our social fate. Instead, he found the bed still made on my side, pillows undisturbed. "Natalie?" he called out, his voice still thick with sleep. "Babe, you overslept." Silence. He stumbled downstairs in his pajamas, probably expecting to find me in full panic mode, surrounded by pots and pans and the chaos of preparing for 58 people. What he found instead was our kitchen exactly as we'd left it the night before. Clean, quiet, and completely empty of any cooking activity. That's when he saw my note, sitting prominently on top of Patricia's guest list. I can only imagine his face as he read those simple words. "Gone to visit my sister. Good luck with your party. Natalie." His first call went straight to my voicemail. I'd turned off my phone during takeoff and hadn't turned it back on. His second call was probably to Amy, but she wouldn't answer either. I'd asked her not to, at least not until I was ready. By 7:30 a.m., Brandon was pacing our kitchen like a caged animal, calling my phone every few minutes and getting the same automated message. The expensive ingredients I'd bought yesterday sat untouched in the refrigerator, mocking him with their uselessness. At 8 a.m., he finally worked up the courage to call his mother. Patricia answered on the first ring, her voice bright and cheerful. "Good morning, sweetheart. How's our little chef doing? Is everything smelling wonderful?" "Mom?" Brandon's voice cracked like a teenager's. "We have a problem." The silence that followed must have been deafening. "What kind of problem?" Patricia's voice had dropped to that dangerous whisper I knew so well. "Natalie's gone. She left a note saying she went to visit her sister. There's no food, Mom. Nothing's been cooked." I wish I could have seen Patricia's face in that moment. The woman who'd spent 3 days orchestrating this elaborate social victory, who'd bragged to Helen about her daughter-in-law's cooking skills, who'd invited 8 extra people just to make the triumph more spectacular. "What do you mean, gone?" Patricia's voice was rising now. "Gone where? For how long?" "I don't know. Her phone's off. She's not answering. Mom, people start arriving in an hour." The next 30 minutes must have been pure chaos. Patricia probably threw on clothes and raced over to our house, her mind spinning through damage control scenarios. They tried calling every catering company in the city, but Saturday morning with 1 hour's notice? Impossible. Patricia's backup plan, ordering pizza for 58 people, fell apart when she realized how that would look to her social circle. Helen Morrison would never let her live it down. By 9 a.m., the first guests were arriving. The Hendersons, always punctual, probably stood on our doorstep expecting to smell the aroma of my legendary cooking. Instead, they found Brandon answering the door in hastily thrown-on clothes, his hair still messy from sleep, stammering excuses about a family emergency. More guests trickled in over the next hour. Patricia, dressed to perfection but with panic in her eyes, tried to maintain her composure while explaining that there had been an unexpected situation with the meal preparation. Helen Morrison arrived at 9:45, fashionably late and expecting to find a spread that would pale in comparison to her own recent dinner party. Instead, she found a living room full of confused guests, no food in sight, and Patricia making increasingly desperate phone calls to restaurants that couldn't accommodate a last-minute party of 60. "Where's your daughter-in-law?" Helen asked sweetly, her eyes taking in the chaos with obvious delight. "I was so looking forward to trying her cooking." Patricia's smile must have looked like it was carved from ice. Natalie had a family emergency. Very sudden. Very unexpected. By 10:30, guests were making polite excuses and leaving. The Hendersons, who Brandon had been so eager to impress, departed with confused looks and whispered conversations. The new pastor and his wife left looking bewildered and probably questioning their decision to join this particular congregation. Helen was among the last to leave, but not before making sure everyone heard her say, "What a shame about the food. I suppose these things happen when you don't plan properly." By 11 a.m., our house was empty except for Brandon and Patricia, surrounded by the wreckage of their social disaster. And somewhere over Kansas, I was sipping coffee and watching clouds drift by my airplane window, finally free. Amy was waiting for me at Denver International Airport with a huge smile and 2 cups of coffee. The moment I saw her familiar face, I felt tears I didn't know I'd been holding back start to flow. "You actually did it," she said, wrapping me in a hug that smelled like home and safety. "You actually walked away." We drove to her house in comfortable silence, the Rocky Mountains rising in the distance like a promise of new beginnings. It wasn't until we were sitting in her kitchen, surrounded by the cheerful chaos of family life, kids' drawings on the refrigerator, toys scattered on the floor, that I finally turned my phone back on. 47 missed calls, 32 voicemails, 61 text messages. The first few were from Brandon, progressing from confused to panicked to angry. "Where are you? This isn't funny. You're embarrassing my entire family." Then came Patricia's messages, each one more venomous than the last. She called me selfish, irresponsible, and several other words I won't repeat. Her final text simply read, "You've ruined everything." But it was Brandon's last voicemail, left just an hour ago, that made me pause. His voice was different, quieter, more broken than I'd ever heard it. "Natalie, I know you're angry. I know I messed up. The party was a disaster. Mom's not speaking to me. Half the people from my firm think I can't manage my own household, but I don't care about any of that anymore. I just want you to come home so we can talk." Amy read my expression. "He's finally figuring it out, isn't he?" "Maybe," I said, but I wasn't ready to forgive him yet. Or maybe he's just embarrassed and wants someone to blame. I spent 3 days at Amy's house, helping with her kids and remembering what it felt like to be around people who actually valued my opinions. Her husband, Tom, treated me like family, never once asking why I'd left or suggesting I should go back. Their children, ages 6 and 8, accepted my presence without question, dragging me into games and asking me to read bedtime stories. On Wednesday evening, Brandon showed up. Amy answered the door and I heard their muffled conversation from the living room. When she came back, her expression was serious. "He flew here," she said simply. "He's been sitting in a rental car outside for 2 hours, working up the courage to knock." I found him on Amy's front porch, looking more defeated than I'd ever seen him. His usually perfect hair was messy, his clothes wrinkled. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "I'm sorry," he said before I could speak. "I'm so sorry, Natalie. You were right about everything." We sat on the porch swing, the evening air cool against our skin. For a long time, neither of us spoke. "She planned it," Brandon finally said. "Mom planned for you to fail. She told me after everyone left. She said she wanted to teach you your place in the family." The admission hung between us like a physical weight. "And you let her," I said quietly. "I let her," he agreed. "I was so scared of disappointing her that I was willing to sacrifice you instead. That makes me a coward and a terrible husband." I studied his face, looking for signs that this was just another manipulation. But all I saw was genuine remorse and something that looked like the man I'd fallen in love with 3 years ago. "I can't go back to the way things were," I said. "I won't be your mother's punching bag anymore, and I won't be married to someone who won't stand up for me." "I know," Brandon said. "I've been thinking about that a lot over the past few days. I told Mom that if she can't treat you with respect, she won't be welcome in our lives anymore." "And what did she say?" Brandon's laugh was bitter. "She said I was choosing my wife over my family. I told her that you are my family now." We talked until midnight, laying out new boundaries and rules for our marriage. It wouldn't be easy. Brandon had 30 years of conditioning to overcome. but for the first time since our wedding, I felt like we might actually have a chance. The next morning, we flew home together. Our kitchen still smelled faintly of the expensive ingredients that had gone bad in our absence. But this time we cleaned it up together.